developments now. It's scary. The same with Bigfoot. As we start taking more territory, as humans start going into the national forests and looking for Bigfoot, maybe they're getting tired of these humans, and they're either going to fight back or they're going to just move farther, deeper in.
Well, no, a lot of those animals are coming up here now. We're seeing more bear, and we're seeing the elk populations continue to grow around here. But I think, as some friend of mine alluded, that the people shouldn't be feeding the elk when they come up here, because then they get used to humans and they expect it. Just like some other species and animals, like the raccoons, you don't want to start feeding them either, because they'll demand it. And you know where you live, Gary, you know about Point Defiance Park. There's a family of raccoons. They say, do not feed the raccoons. And people pull over and do it. And when people do pull over and say, look at the nice raccoons, they'll and if you don't feed them, they try to jump in your window.
Yeah, they get aggressive too.
Yeah, they get aggressive. So, and a lot of people know about those aggressive raccoons in Point Defiance Park.
Yeah, a lot of people have been actually attacked by them because, you know what? They expect you to have food. You don't have food, they're mad now. So, I mean, yeah.
Right.
So it's a continuous problem. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, who's to say that maybe Bigfoots don't get diseases that, messes them up a little bit mentally, like rabies or disease that only they get. We don't know, and it might make them way more aggressive also. And you mix in that with them losing their territory and people out there beating the bush, in their house and trying to bat things against trees and yelling at them, that might get them a little stirred up.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. Now, there could be a possible reason why they keep their distance from us, because we might be carriers that could be lethal to them.
That's
I don't know
true.
if anybody's ever thought about that.
Well, the same way like we killed off a lot of Indians, when we populated, this country when we first came over on the ships. It killed off a lot of the natives the same way. Maybe that's why there's not many Bigfoot anymore around, because maybe we killed them off with our, what we're carrying. Common cold could probably even kill a creature if they have no defense for it.
Right.
And that's exactly when you think about even both movies, The War of the Worlds, the original one, and of course the newer one with Tom Cruise. The focus on those, that what really got them at the end was the biological disease got to them. Once they came out of their airtight ships, then they died from what was in the air.
Yeah, I remember that. Actually, what happened is they started running out of air, so they started taking in our air, and then all of a sudden they died off. It's a two-way street, though. It could be we could die off from them, and we could kill them. It could be both ways.
Well, look what they're doing. Think about this now. What's under the Earth's crust sometimes, or like when they start going into the Amazon forest and start uprooting some of that stuff in there that might contain things that are deadly to humans, and uproot whatever it was into the air, and causing pathogens to spread to places because of upsetting things.
I'd be more worried about Antarctica, the permafrost, as it thaws out. Stuff that had been dormant for tens of thousands or millions of years, all of a sudden now being thawed out, and then all of a sudden somehow circulating into the air and being carried. That's more concerning to me than anything. The rainforest, the way it's going, isn't going to be a rainforest much longer. I can tell you that. They need a good rain.
No, and of course the Antarctica continues to melt, and of course that's going to create the rising sea levels. And I was actually listening to you, Gary, before I came on, and you were talking about the rising sea levels in Florida. But what I was thinking was, up here in Greenwater, I was going to try to sell some oceanfront property.
Well, just don't buy any.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I mean, up here in Greenwater. So we talk about the tsunami of the Cascadia subduction zone, and about the tsunami that can come in right up to our foothills. So,
that's the scary part.
Yeah, they talk about that. I've actually been reading, because we've had all these mini earthquakes up in this area. That is another, and of course I live next to this time bomb, about 12 12 miles to the peak where we're at. So and then we do have a place we could drop, get some get to the high country pretty quick. But I don't think if we had one of those pyroplastic flows that just so happened to come down that side of the mountain, we'd be toast. We would be no different than the ones that suffered in Mount St. Helens.
Oh, it'd be worse because they talk about the flows could go all the way down to the tide flats at Tacoma.
Oh, yeah. That's why we had those Lahara sirens up there. And what kills me is years ago, you used to be able to drive from Puyallup to Orting, and that was all that nice, fresh farmland that grew things. And, well, why do you think it was growing things so well? Because it was all full of volcanic material, okay? And so what do? Developers come in and put people on it. Tons and tons and tons and tons of houses in that valley. Well, they got the Lahara warning, and they even have an AM radio, AM channel. I think it's 1580 down there. That whenever there's a Lahara incident, that's where they're going to broadcast it. About make sure you find the evacuation routes. Well, you know what? I hate to say this. I'm not going to buy a piece of property where I see a sign that says, "Well, if the volcano comes this way, you need to go up this hill." Now, I mean, we've already dealt with a situation, OSA. You remember that incident about 3 years? Oh, how long ago was that? 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, about 8. Yeah.
Oh my God, that was just horrifying. That was just, and that's not even anything to do with the volcano. That's just a landslide. But I think it just buried about 37 people.
Yeah, it took out a whole area.
Were gone.
Yeah, it liquefied. It was muddy. It just all liquefied, and they were gone instantly. Yes.
So there's, we have our share of. Even with the kind of dangers that we might face here in Washington State, I honestly been to other places in the United States. I'm from Kentucky, but I don't want to deal with the weather. The kind of weather and the patterns that go on in other places. As far as I'm concerned, we still have the most tranquil, moderate weather of the United States right now.
We do.
And unless it changes, I'm just going to stay put right here.
I don't know. I'm just worried. Don't buy any property over around the UK, too. They're supposed to have the coldest winter. Now, also, I was reading today from one of the government agencies, all this water is dumping, as it's melting in Antarctica, is cooling down the Antarctica. The Atlantic Ocean. And, coming from the equator all the way up to Ireland, UK, France, it keeps the water, at a certain temperature. It's dropping in temperature. I hate to say it, the UK and France and Germany and Russia are setting up for an ice age. And that could happen probably the way things are going, maybe in the next 5-10 years. And people are putting their fingers over their eyes and putting fingers in their ears, and they're just disregarding what's going on. It's scary.
Well, you already know that the Gulf Stream stopped.
That's what I was talking about. It's almost stopped.
Yep. Yes. And that controlled some of that warm water flow up in that area. And so whatever caused it, whether it was ecological or it could be just changing Earth patterns, which I think is more the case, because we're not really used to cycles, because we're only looking at Earth cycles within our lifetime or in the last couple of hundred years of recorded history or so. And if the Earth is experiencing these longer cycles when we don't know about it, it could be just one of those things. It could be the very thing that the Earth does experience these extinction level
cleansings
type of events. That's why we don't ever seem to get past a certain point in our advanced civilization, because it keeps wiping us out and we have to start all over. Whether that's caused by, and I'm just talking about things that happen here, not necessarily an asteroid hitting the Earth or something like that. You know what I mean?
I think what's happened is the Earth is tilted a little bit. Our magnetic field is changing. I think the iron core in our planet is changed a little bit, and that's because the Earth is tilted a little bit more. I think that's all affecting our weather. You know, the last mini ice age in Seattle was buried under thousands of feet of ice, but you go 60 miles away and it was livable. So whatever happens, it's going to be patches of livable area. The problem is, when is it going to happen? Is it going to happen next week or tomorrow? Or if you look at the global superstorm written by Whitney and Art Bell, I mean, if you read that book and even watch the movie, it was produced after he wrote the book, based on his book. It's scary. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in 10 minutes from now. And people are just sitting there defiant. Al Gore today slammed our president big time, calling him basically an idiot. He said, I told everybody about this. It's going to happen. Nobody would listen to me. Now people are panicking and things are happening.
Yeah, and then you add that with what you just mentioned earlier about the plant life. I mean, about the plant life and about the life in the oceans, and the decrease of animal population from all this stuff, from what's happening to the oceans, and of course, the radiation issue. I'm sure that has a big impact on from Japan, and that's one of the reasons I don't want to eat fish anymore But I don't think that's just a temporary measure. And sooner or later, this stuff will saturate everything. And but if it eventually, whatever happens kills everything. Okay, if you eliminate life in the oceans, that's where a lot of our oxygen comes from.
Oh yeah.
Okay, it did come from the Amazon, but where's the Amazon forest anymore? Where's all the lush trees and the green life that puts out through photosynthesis and takes carbon dioxide and converts it to oxygen? That's a necessary process for us to live. We got to have oxygen. Matter of fact, we got to have 20% oxygen in the atmosphere. I wish I would document or take a mental note where I read this information, because I'm all over the board. But I've seen some indication of the oxygen level starting to dip.
It is.
On the Earth. You know what? Or maybe we're at 19% or something, or maybe somewhere between 19 and 20. But it was documented somewhere. Have you read any reports along those lines?
Yeah, and that's what, again, it gets scary about 2040. I mean, all this stuff at that time, they did a lot of computer simulations on this, and it all kind of comes in about the year 2040 when we start having the collapse of the ocean, the collapse of everything. And again, as you know, the rainforest, if you go on Google and look at some of what's going on there, it's already half burned up. It's gone, and it's continuing to go. Every day, it's a big area is dying off. The ocean is dying right now, and it's no way to stop it at this point. We can slow it down a little bit, but we can't stop it. Again, if Japan decides to dump all this radioactive waste, billions of gallons of it, it is going to kill fish and octopus and crabs and all this stuff. Where is our food supply going to go? It's going to affect us. And then it's also somehow going to get into the farmlands. I mean, the radiation will start spreading everywhere. It'll be in your milk and all this stuff. What's it going to do to us? Are we going to go like that old Charlton Heston movie to the point where we're going to be, doing Soylent Green to survive? It's scary what our future is going. And it seems like the people don't really care. They read about it in the news. But you know what? We got people saying the news is fake. But you have to be really stupid not to realize something is happening. Big time.
Yeah. It's going to make it worse. And by 2040, our world population will probably be close to doubled, which means probably around 12 to 14 billion people. And that's a lot more people, mouths to feed, a lot more consumption, and a lot more waste, and a lot more oxygen consumed. And think about that for a minute.
And James, they already said in 2040, guess what? Water is going to be in very short supply, drinking water. Think about that.
Yeah, that's a scary thought, too, because water may become a currency someday.
That's like what they said.
Yeah, like Mad Max all over again.
I guess the next time a UFO stops by my place, I'm going to hitch a ride.
Maybe we all should hitch a ride. Get their phone number and location, and they can take us and beam us up.